Trump's biracial former girlfriend just made shocking announcement about the president. Since the riots in Charlottesville, Virginia just over a week ago, the press and the left have been working overtime to paint the president as a racist. They've been working on it for quite some time, but they can never quite get it to stick, it seems. They don't usually have any more cannon fodder other than the fact that he himself is white, and that some of the white supremacists support the president. No matter how many times it's pointed out, the liberals conveniently forget that because a white supremacist supports the president, doesn't mean that president supports the white supremacist. Unfortunately, though, the smear campaign carries onward, and no amount of proof has been able to turn it back. The same has been done with those who would blame him of sexism. No matter how many women he places in powerful positions, the feminists are constantly crying foul about him and his administration. It's unclear how many breakthrough appointments he'd have to make, that is Kellyanne Conway, before they'd forgive him for being a white male, but he has yet to break that particular barrier. The push to call the president a racist has moved forward at a pretty good clip, following his comments about all sides being guilty of the problems that took place in Virginia. So a few people decided to get the bottom of the issue by talking to someone of diverse ethnic background who was very close to the commander-in-chief. That's his former girlfriend Carrie Young. Young is biracial and had a somewhat lengthy relationship with the then real estate mogul. Her comments on him are very telling about the character of the president. According to her, there's nothing even remotely racist about him. Even the New York Times had a hard time making President Trump sound bad after this ex-girlfriend got through singing his praises. Washington, Carrie Young, a model who dated Donald J. Trump for 2 years before he married another model named Melania Knauss, remembers clearly bringing up her race with a real estate tycoon early in their relationship. As with so many issues, he steered the conversation to celebrity. "I didn't hide my race from Donald Trump. He knew," Miss Young said in a rare interview. "He would say, 'You were like Derek Jeter.' And I would say, 'Exactly.' I never heard him say a disparaging comment towards any race of people," she added. The few African Americans in his inner circle respond with an emphatic no. Most privately describe him as a 71-year-old man with fixed views and a cloistered history, raised in a heavily white enclave in Queens, who came of age and built a tower in the Manhattan sky when New York City was roiling with racial strife. "Just because you're a nationalist and you're white doesn't make you a white nationalist," said Katrina Pearson, an African American who was a spokeswoman for Mr. Trump's presidential campaign. "Putting Americans first makes you a nationalist, and in that case, I'm a nationalist. I think we should take care of our families and our children first." Ben Carson, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development and the only African American in Mr. Trump's cabinet, said while on a trip to Louisiana on Monday that the controversy over Mr. Trump's statements on the violence in Charlottesville were little squabbles that were being blown out of proportion. "We have got to begin to think more logically and stop trying to stir up controversy and start concentrating on the issues that really threaten us and threaten our children," Mr. Carson said. Critics see a man who has viewed African Americans as tools for his personal advancement. The Democratic National Committee on Thursday distributed a litany of past offenses, under the headline "Trump's Very Long History of Racism." There was never any engagement that would be mutually beneficial. "It was someone hiring you to entertain them and make them money," said the Reverend Al Sharpton, with whom Mr. Trump was friendly at various points as they both came up as characters in the New York City tabloids. Critics see whatever they want to see, and that's obvious in the way they frame everything the president does. When there's no real substance to pin on him, they seem to just be finding people willing to say unflattering things about him and using that to push the agenda of the moment. This might be a bit of a side note, but the president in particular and conservatives, in general, are feeling the heat to go out of our way and distance ourselves from the violent alt-right so that we're not labeled Nazis or KKK. And yet the left is embracing Antifa, BLM and every other violent group who wants to throw their hat in the ring against the president. The double standard here is that no matter what the president says, He'll be labeled a white supremacist because he's white and conservative, but liberals are allowed to actually be violent and act in racial violence and they're given a free pass. This is not only wrong, but it's race baiting at its worst, because some are allowed to be violent, and others are watched like a hawk.